It was supposed to be a simple weekend escape. No phones, no responsibilities, just 3 friends and the wild. College had been stressful, and we all needed a break. Jamie, Ryan, and I had planned a 2-night camping trip into a wooded area not too far from campus. For privacy's sake, I'll keep their real names out of this. Jamie had always been the outdoorsman of the group, confident, self-assured, the kind of guy who actually owned flint for starting fires and knew the difference between poison ivy and regular vines. Ryan and I were just along for the experience, following his lead like clueless city boys with overstuffed backpacks. We parked on the gravel edge of a long-forgotten forest access road and set off on foot. The hike was supposed to be only a couple of miles, but the trail was overgrown and the forest had a way of closing in on you. Trees loomed high above, their branches like twisted arms, blotting out the sun. The further we walked, the quieter it became. No birds chirping, no leaves rustling, just the sound of our boots crunching the underbrush and the occasional creak of Jamie's leather pack. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. After what felt like hours, we reached a clearing. A wide open field stretched before us, the tall grass waving gently in the breeze. On the far side, a slow, murky river snaked along the edge of the woods, its surface reflecting what little daylight remained. Jamie smiled. "This is the spot," he said, as if unveiling a hidden gem. It was peaceful, secluded, and just strange enough to feel like we were far from civilization. We set up our tents in the middle of the field, far enough from the trees to avoid falling branches, and close enough to the river to hear the soothing ripple of water. Jamie showed us how to secure the tent stakes properly, how to dig a fire pit safely, and how to store food away from animals. We laughed a lot during those first few hours, swapping stories, drinking cheap beer, roasting marshmallows. The fire crackled, casting warm orange light on our faces while the shadows danced behind us. Just as the sun dipped below the horizon, I saw them. At first, I thought it was my eyes playing tricks on me, but no, I was sure. There were figures standing at the edge of the woods, 3, maybe 4. They stood just beyond the last trees, half hidden in the dim light, motionless. Their clothes looked filthy, worn down, camouflage colors, browns and greens that blended into the forest around them. They had bulky backpacks slung over their shoulders, like hikers or hunters, but something didn't sit right. They weren't talking, they weren't moving, they were just watching. I nudged Ryan and pointed. "Hey, you see that?" He squinted into the darkness. "Where?" Jamie followed our gaze. As soon as he spotted them, his face changed. His casual, confident demeanor slipped into something darker, tense, alert. "That's weird," he muttered. "Hunting in these woods is illegal, and it's not even the season." Ryan laughed. "Maybe they're just campers like us." Jamie shook his head. "No, nobody camps this far out unless they know exactly where they're going, and even then, you don't just stand there staring at strangers in the dark." I kept glancing back at the tree line. The figures hadn't moved. It was hard to make out faces from that distance, but it almost seemed like they were turned toward us, watching us, listening. Not a single flashlight, not a single voice, just statues in the trees. Jamie tossed another log onto the fire and tried to act normal, but the mood had changed. We kept drinking and chatting, but there was a weight in the air now, a tightness in our chests none of us could explain. Every so often, I'd sneak a look toward the trees, and every time, I swore I saw the shadows shift slightly, like they'd moved when we weren't looking. Eventually, the conversation faded, and the fire burned low. Jamie stood and stretched. "All right, I think I'm calling it. We've got to hike back tomorrow." We all retreated to our tents. Ryan zipped his up tight, still chuckling about how Jamie was getting paranoid. But I couldn't laugh. Not this time. As I lay in my tent, staring up at the nylon ceiling just inches above my face. I couldn't stop thinking about the people, those figures, just standing there in the dark, half concealed by trees. I told myself they were just fellow campers, maybe off-track hikers, maybe nothing at all. But in my gut, I knew better. Something about the way they appeared, the way they just stood there, completely still. It didn't feel human. It felt like a warning, a silent one. And I was starting to think, we shouldn't have ignored it.
Sleep didn't come easy. I lay inside my tent, cocooned in my sleeping bag, listening to the distant murmur of the river and the occasional crackle of the dying fire. The sounds that had once felt peaceful were now sinister, too empty, too quiet. The image of those motionless figures at the tree line haunted me. My ears strained for any noise that might hint at movement, any crunch of leaves, any snapping twig, but there was nothing. Just the oppressive silence and the fluttering of my uneasy heartbeat. I shifted on the thin blow-up mattress, every rustle of nylon feeling too loud. I thought about unzipping the tent and peeking out again, but something stopped me. The air felt thick, like it was holding its breath, like the night was listening. I checked my phone. 2:17 a.m. Still hours till dawn. I rolled over, trying to will myself into sleep. But then, I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate, close. At first, my sleep-deprived brain assumed it was Ryan or Jamie. Maybe one of them had gotten up to pee. But then I froze. I hadn't heard any tent zippers open, and the footsteps weren't just one person. There were at least 3 distinct sets. They were moving slowly across the grass, their pace synchronized, like they were in a procession. My body went rigid. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. They were right outside the tents now. I stared wide-eyed at the fabric wall inches from my face, expecting to see beams of flashlights dancing in the dark. But there were no lights. Whoever or whatever was out there was walking in total darkness, unbothered, unafraid. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure they could hear it. The steps passed by, just feet away from me. Not rushing, not sneaking, just calmly walking, like they already knew where they were going. I dared not unzip the tent, not yet. I just listened, every muscle in my body coiled tight. The footsteps grew fainter, fainter, until finally, silence returned. It was even worse than before. Minutes passed, maybe 10, maybe 30. I couldn't tell. Then, cautiously, I slid my hand to the zipper and tugged it open as slowly as possible. The cool air hit my face. The night was thick with moisture and shadow, the fire now just smoldering embers. As my eyes adjusted, I saw Ryan's tent across from mine. His zipper was halfway down. A second later, his head popped out, eyes wide with the same terror I felt. We didn't say anything. We didn't have to. We both heard it. Without a word, I crawled out and tiptoed to Jamie's tent. He was still asleep, or so I thought. I gave his shoulder a shake. He startled awake, and before I could even explain, Ryan joined us, his voice a shaken whisper. There were people walking past our tents. 3, maybe more. They didn't have lights. Jamie's reaction chilled me to the bone. His face went pale. His jaw clenched. This wasn't new camper paranoia. This was genuine fear from someone who'd spent years in the woods. That's not right, he whispered. No one would be out here like that. Not without lights. Not without making noise. We stood there in the dark, barely able to see, straining our eyes toward the tree line. At first, There was nothing. Then, Jamie froze. His hand grabbed my shoulder tightly. He hissed, "Don't move." We turned toward where he was looking. In the distance, just beyond the field, the figures had returned, but this time they weren't moving. They were standing, still, watching. At least 5 of them now, maybe 6, lined up at the edge of the trees, their silhouettes just visible in the faint starlight. No movement, no words, just the overwhelming presence of being watched. My breath caught in my throat. This was no camping party, no hikers, no curious locals. These people, if they were people, weren't supposed to be here. They didn't belong, and they didn't want us here either. Jamie didn't wait. "Pack, now," he barked, his voice trembling. "I'm not staying another damn second." We grabbed our bags, shoving gear in without caring if it fit. We barely spoke, just worked by instinct, terror sharpening every movement. The figures didn't move, just stared. As soon as our bags were on our backs, we ran. We didn't use our flashlights. Jamie said it would make us easier to follow. So we stumbled through the dark, relying on memory and the faint outline of the trail. Tree branches clawed at us, roots snagged our boots. The darkness was nearly impenetrable. Every sound made us flinch. Every gust of wind felt like breath on the back of our necks. But we didn't stop. Whatever those things were, they didn't need light. They moved in the dark like they were born in it. And something told me they were still behind us.
We ran like hell. The woods swallowed us whole as we plunged into the trail, barely able to see 2 feet ahead. Our breath came in ragged gasps, boots slipping on mossy roots and loose soil. I could feel my heartbeat in my teeth. Branches slashed our faces, thorns tore at our sleeves, but we didn't stop. None of us said a word. We were past words now. Our fear was instinctual, primal. Whatever was back there, it wasn't human, not in the way we understood. We didn't know if they were following. We didn't have to know. The air behind us felt charged, like static, heavy. Every step deeper into the woods carried with it the sensation that something was just behind us, watching, smiling. Ryan tripped once and almost went down hard, but Jamie grabbed his arm mid-fall and yanked him up without missing a beat. "Keep going," Jamie hissed. "Don't stop no matter what you hear." That line stuck with me. No matter what you hear. It sounded like a rule, a warning. Had he experienced something like this before? Up ahead, I saw the outline of the old forest access road, the place where we'd left the car. Relief surged in my chest and I picked up speed, lungs burning, legs numb, but just as we broke out of the trees into the clearing where the car waited, Ryan stopped cold. "Look," he gasped. We turned to follow his gaze. At the far end of the clearing, barely visible in the weak starlight, the group stood again. This time closer. Only 20, maybe 30 feet away. They'd beaten us here. How? How was that possible? There were more of them now. At least 8, maybe 10. Their silhouettes stood unnaturally still, heads tilted slightly to the side, as though trying to listen to our fear. Their clothes were torn, stiff with grime and old blood. I could finally see a few of their faces. Pale, hollow, blank, like wax figures melted in the sun. One of them had no eyes, just gaping sockets, black and bottomless. I felt bile rise in my throat. "We go around," Jimmy said firmly. "Stay in the dark. Don't let them see where we go." We darted back into the tree line, circling the clearing in complete silence. My fingers were numb from holding my pack. My legs screamed. I didn't care. We kept low, stepping carefully, painfully slow, weaving around bushes and fallen logs. The moment we reached the driver's side of the car, Jamie clicked the key fob. Beep! The sound echoed like a gunshot. From across the clearing, we heard something. Movement. Feet dragging. Leaves rustling. They were coming. "Go!" Jamie roared. We piled into the car, slammed the doors shut. Jamie turned the key. Nothing. Click. Click. The engine was dead. Ryan screamed, "Start the damn thing!" Click. Then a cough. Vroom. The engine roared to life. Headlights flicked on and swept across the field. They were everywhere. Not 10, not 20, more. Lined up just outside the tree line, crawling out of the shadows like insects. Their eyes gleamed white in the light, those who had eyes. Some didn't. Some had gaping wounds where mouths should be. One of them had no lower jaw at all, its tongue swaying loosely from its throat as it staggered forward. Jamie threw the car in reverse, spun it around with a screech of tires and dirt, and floored it. We didn't speak. We didn't even cry. We just listened to the wind against the windows and the last few dull thuds as something tapped the back of the car as we peeled away. We didn't stop driving until we hit a highway. We didn't sleep that night or the next. We didn't talk about it either. Not really. What was there to say? No one would believe us. We barely believed it ourselves. But we all agreed on one thing. That was no camping accident. Those people, if you could call them that, weren't hikers and they weren't lost. They were waiting. And they'd waited a long time. Weeks passed. Ryan moved back to his parents' house. Jamie deleted every GPS pin and map he had ever made of his secret spots. As for me, I stopped going outside at night. Something about the dark feels different now. Worse. Not just the fear of the unknown, but the certainty that something knows me. And sometimes, on the very worst nights, I wake up in a cold sweat, certain I heard the soft crunch of footsteps outside my window. Not running, not sneaking, just walking.